Hello, everyone. How are you doing? I hope you're having a good Tuesday. I am coming to you. I am in London. It's sunny, and that pleases me greatly. So I hope it is good where you are. If we haven't met before, I'm Nicky Raby, and I do lots of things. I have a very much a portfolio career. Let me just put that there. There we go. So I'm an actor, I'm a personal branding coach, a writer, a speaker, a podcaster. And today we're going to be talking about leadership and how you lead yourself. And don't worry, this is not going to be like just get some really strong shoulder pads or just speak in a bigger voice. This will be about tailoring the information and you picking and mixing all the different bits that you want to have from it. So if there's anything today that has sparked your interest, there's some free masterclasses if you want to find out more over on my website. So here we go. There we go. So the first thing I want to say in terms of leadership, so you want to grab a piece of paper and a pen and just see if you can jot down some ideas around this. And don't worry if you're like, wow, she's going really fast. How can I scribble down all the questions? You're going to get the slides afterwards. So you're in safe hands there. The first thing I want to ask you is, what answers are you looking for in terms of leadership? And what's on your mind? So there may be something very specific, like I want to go for a job opportunity, or maybe you're at that point in terms of your career where you're like, I just feel like I need to step it up a little bit. It's kind of like that moment when you were a kid and you got that sense with your bike that it was time to take your stabilizers off and just see what it would be like with the bigger kids doing the bigger things. So I just wanted to see what comes up to mind just from the very beginning, because that instinct, that first idea, is usually the thing that needs to be given a bit of attention and a bit of love and a bit of a care and a bit of time, I guess, to explore. So just see what that is for you. This is straight from my own mother's mouth, which is one of the best things that she's ever said, which is control the controllables. And my goodness me, have I needed that in 2020. And yeah, it's a phrase that I just really come back to all the time. And the reason I wanted to share it with you today is you can control yourself. And sometimes that's the only thing that you can control. So I want to, in a way, pass this power back to you in terms of leadership, so you're not stuck in that moment of, well, I'll just wait until this person in my team gets promoted, or I'll just wait until so-and-so something else happens. Basically, a chain of events that don't necessarily have anything to do with you. So what we're looking for in terms of this leadership is really controlling the controllables and really thinking about all the things that you can do in order to support your own growth. But I'm not going to pretend that it's all rainbows and unicorns, unfortunately, because doing that version is probably the harder version, because it's so much easier if we can stay in a position where people can just hand over stuff to you and say, this is what you're going to do. This is what happens next. It's kind of like when you were a kid at primary school, like, this is when you're going to have your lunch. This is when you need to put your coat on to go outside. Whereas adult life, unfortunately, or fortunately, is not necessarily like that. So sometimes this means doing the harder versions in terms of leadership. And this can show up in lots of different ways. And these are just a few things that come to mind when I'm thinking about it. Sometimes it is that sense of trusting your own instinct. So when you're going through growth or you're being a true leader, sometimes the facts don't necessarily speak for themselves yet because you don't have the data. So it is about connecting with that inner trust of like, I really think that I can do this. I'm really going to bet on myself, even though in a spreadsheet, it may not look to be the case. It's sometimes about really connecting with that inner instinct that you hold, because it's all within each of us, even though sometimes it's quiet. So it's allowing that space to do that trusting. Number two, being a trailblazer. My goodness, this, and I'm not saying that I was in terms of the world, but certainly in the UK, when I qualified as a coach in 2013, once you said that you were into self-development or coaching, people kind of almost backed away from you like, oh, I'm not really sure about what she's doing or what's she trying to do. Oh, I don't know what this is. Whereas now in 2021, everybody, and rightly so, is talking about self-development, is talking about mental health. But at the time, I really had to find my flow and really, again, go back into trusting, go back into my instinct. I know this works. So staying in that moment. Sometimes it's that case of going first. And we know what that means, when you suddenly go, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to be the person who jumps in and goes, do you want to follow me? Because I'm going to do it and I'm going to be brave. Topping and tailing the day. I know progressively more so people are just saying, I just lead and I run my own business and I check in once a day and I have a 7-figure income or whatever the internet kind of sexy sales copy is. But often being a leader does mean exploring and going the distance. And that's not to say I advocate working 18-hour days, far from it. But it does mean being able to check in and work at your optimum level. You can read some of the other things as well. Sometimes you have to have awkward conversations. Sometimes you have to be seen to be publicly experimenting. And I think this happens so often as well, especially when we are leaders, when we have big ideas, when we know that we can't stop thinking about something. So we've got to make some moves and we know it's that time to step up. Sometimes it can feel like we're in a glass box and everybody's like, oh, what's happening? What's he doing? What's she doing? What's going on? And this is the reason that I wanted to share this quote. Now, if you've got any little ears, you can maybe glance and see that I'm going to say a word that might not be favorable for children. So I'm just giving you the pre-warning there to put your headphones in if you want, but I'm just going to read it to you. This is a quote from Brené Brown. I want to be in the arena. I want to be brave with, with life. Sorry, my videos are here. With my life. And when we make the choice to dare greatly, we sign up to get our asses kicked. We choose courage or we can choose comfort, but we can't have both, not at the same time. Vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage. A lot of cheap seats in the arena are filled with people who never venture onto the floor. They just hurl mean-spirited criticism and put downs from a safe distance. The problem is when we stop caring what people think and stop feeling hurt by cruelty, we lose our ability to connect. But when we're defined by what people think, we lose courage to be vulnerable. Therefore, we need to be selective about the feedback we let into our lives. For me, if you're not in the arena getting your ass kicked, I'm not interested in your feedback. Oh, that is such a powerful one for me. And it's one I come back to. So in this time of being able to reinvent what these versions look like to you, I want you to jot down a few words, sentences, and maybe these are not necessarily things that you believe that you are yet. Maybe there is a bit of a, oh gosh, I've got a bit of work to do. I feel that that's a bit of a stretchy goal. I want you to think about what leadership means to you and how you connect with it. And maybe there's somebody in mind, somebody you've worked with previously, or somebody you watch online, for example, or a book, or somebody down your street, whoever it might be. I want you to think about what leadership means to you. And what kind of leadership style are you drawn to? So what do you value? And if you, again, can control the controllables, that's really difficult to say, and go back to what you resonate with and what's important to you, you're more likely to bring people along the way who agree or connect or align with your vision as well. And that's really important, to be amongst other people who value the same things as you, even though if they're not exactly like you, because we don't want to just have clones of ourselves. We want diversity. We want different conversations. We want an amazing moving machine of all kinds of different things, but really being clear about what you are setting for yourself is going to be important. Why and how are you getting the sense that you want to step up? So perhaps over the last year or so, you've had a sense of going, it's time. I'm 40 in November, so automatically I'm feeling like I'm in that moment of, right, let's step it up, bring it on. What's next? What's going on? What's the next level of this? How can I really utilize all the things that I've embedded up until this point, and how can I accelerate them? How can I let them fly? And getting excited with that. Now, that's not to say underneath it all, you might have all these fears of like, I'm not sure how I would do that. Am I really ready? How's this going to be? But if you lead from that place of, it's my time, I need to, what is this thing that keeps coming up again and again? So what does your next level of Candy Crush leadership look like? Now, if you've ever played Candy Crush or any kind of computer game, you'll know that there are hidden lands that you've maybe not explored yet. And sometimes they'll give you a trial run of something and it will pop up and you're like, oh, that's what that is already. Or sometimes you might get that sense of stepping in on somebody else's meeting, or maybe you listen to a podcast where somebody discloses how much they're earning or how they've been, I don't know, they've managed to sell their business, whatever that might be. But I want you to think about what your next level of leadership looks like. What does that land look like? What does that landscape look and feel like? What are you doing? How are you showing up? If you could describe it, how would you start to plot it out? So I mentioned this in my talk that I did at the beginning of this month. My goodness, 2021, like who knows what month we're in? We're in February, off we go. So I talk about this in terms of my magical triangle. And this really helps me to keep things balanced. And also, it's a really lovely piece. It's a foundational piece that I come back to when I know things are out of whack. So when I'm talking about this magical triangle and I'm going to the next level, going to the next step in terms of leadership or goal setting or money or whatever it might be, I'm looking at the vision. So making sure that my vision, my endpoint is really clear. And I've given this example before, but there's nothing worse than getting in a car with somebody and they go, I think it's round here somewhere. I'm not really sure. Oh, I don't know. Oh, let's just go a bit further and see how we go. We've been a passenger in that car. So the vision is the equivalent of putting in your postcode into the sat nav and going, right, that's the point where we want to end up. The strategy is very much about building the plan. What are the steps that you're going to take? What is going to be the process that you're going to follow? And of course, that might change and divert and pivot, and other things need to come into play. But coming back to a situation where you go, I know what the thing is. I know what I need to do next. I know what the next right action is going to be really useful. Number 3 is all about mindset, making sure that you have the thoughts, the habits, the beliefs, the systems, the patterns of behavior that are going to support this. So going back to the car analogy, making sure the vision is clear, i.e. the postcode, where are you trying to get to? Second, the strategy. Have you got a car that's going to take you there? Do you have enough snacks that are going to see you through? Do you have enough gas, petrol in your car that's going to take you there? The third part is about that mindset. Like, do you believe that you can actually go the distance, that you can drive that? Do you feel confident that you're going to be wide awake enough in order to do that journey? So coming back to this in terms of your leadership will give you an indication of where you're on and where you're off. And sometimes when we're going through a growth stage, coming back to this triangle could be, well, I've got my vision in place. Like, I know what I'm trying to achieve. and I've got my strategy. I know what I need to do next. So sometimes it's like, but it's still not happening. So maybe there's part of your mindset, part of your growth that needs to be looked at and tweaked and paid attention to. When you're thinking about your leadership going forward, it's really important to be connecting consistently with your why. And maybe this is an invitation for you right now to think about why now is your time to really step things up. And wherever you can, get emotional with that why, because it's those moments where we see it. I always like watching, and I don't know where you are in the world, but we have it in the UK, and I'm sure you could watch something on YouTube. We have this charity here called Sports Relief, and you see kind of normal people, as in non-athletes, completing quite crazy tasks. So cycling, or going from the top of Scotland down to the bottom of the UK, or they cross the channel by swimming, all of these things. And on paper, from the beginning, they're saying, I don't know if I can do this, but there is a why that is pulling them forward, whether it's they want to raise a certain amount of money, or they have a personal goal that they want to overcome. So whenever you can, and you're thinking and, visualizing and considering all these next options, really keep asking yourself why. Because sometimes we can go, well, because Dave in accounts got promoted and so do I. And if that is the case, just go a bit deeper, explore it. Why do you want what you want? But first, we're going to just go backwards. So I want you to think over the last year in terms of your own leadership, in terms of your own growth and where you've been over the last year, and really consider what your successes have been. Now, don't worry, you don't have to have won a Nobel Peace Prize or have earned a certain amount of money or done a huge athletic challenge or any of that, those kind of shiny things. These are about your successes, your own reflections where you go, oh, wow, I speak up in meetings now, or I'm really boundaried around how I work, or I've got much better at sending emails and asking for what I want in the first instance rather than going round and round the houses. So think about your successes. Also, your sliding door moments. Sometimes we rise to the challenge and we set up, sort of step up in terms of our leadership when something happens. So I want you to consider those moments, whether it was like somebody couldn't make the meeting, so I had to deliver the stuff, or maybe suddenly something happened within your organization and you had to step up. And again, those moments could have so easily not happened, but by having that sliding door moment, suddenly you're opening up to new possibilities. And again, your new boundaries. So there is that phrase, what's got you here is not necessarily going to get you there. And really paying attention to the new boundaries that you've been putting in place over the last year or so. So I guess one example that I can give is because my son, who is 5, my daughter is much younger, so we're not chatting about business and life just yet. But my son, who's 5, he has a lot of questions, and him being at home from school for the last year, pretty much, has meant that I have had to set new boundaries in terms of I'm working now or I'm doing this. But it's been really fascinating because I've told him about my business and I've told him about earning money and charging your worth and how you decide on your prices and all kinds of things. So I want you to think about those new boundaries that have come up for you. Another thing that has really been noticeable for me as well is I go to bed much earlier. That is a new boundary for me. I don't work in the evenings because, there's enough hours going on in the day. So actually, these new boundaries have had a really profound effect on so many different areas of my life. So I don't know if you were in the Scouts or the Brownies or any of sort of I can't say that word. I'm just going to choose another word. So those badges that you used to get when you were a kid. So you might get your adventure badge or your cooking badge or your sports badge or things like that. I want you to think about the badges that you have invented and that you've earned in terms of your own leadership. So maybe there's been something that you are always the person who is now suddenly the point of contact, or you're the person who does the pitches, or you're the person who has suddenly put themselves in a new arena, as I was going back to Brene Brown's comment. But suddenly you might have opened up some new arenas for yourself where it's like, no, I'm going to give that a go. I'm going to step up in that way. I also want you to notice the tweaks that you have had. So one of the tweaks could be you make sure you have a really good breakfast, or you've started to get outside much more, or you have better balance, whatever it might be. I want you to really notice those tiny tweaks that have made all the difference. I've recently finished working with a coach for 12 months, and I had to do a reflection. And it was so interesting looking at those things of going, oh my goodness, I would never have done that 12 months ago. And now it's so ingrained in how I show up and how I do things. So really notice what those tweaks are, because it's not necessarily always the big things. I also want you to notice any lifestyle changes that you've had and really check in with what's been going on. Maybe the last year has brought new things, new exciting versions of doing things, and it maybe hasn't been all bad. Maybe you've been able to work much more in the rhythm of how you naturally operate and show up, but really notice what those life changes have been. And maybe not commuting so much has been wonderful, but really pay attention to them. So this is going to be something that maybe you don't necessarily have the clear vision for yet, but I want you to think around what these could look like. So if we fast forward a year from now, the 23rd of February, 2022, I want you to think about what are going to be the successes that you would like to have then. And wherever you can, get as specific as possible. And this might take some further work going forward, where you say, I'm going to take this on a walk, or I'm going to spend half an hour mapping out what this actually looks like for me, and really going into the detail. And the idea with all of these things is sometimes is to really, I guess, listen to what's going on for you and working at your own pace. So sometimes when I do these exercises, I literally can't write fast enough. I'm like, this is going to happen. And sometimes the vision comes through a bit slower and a bit, oh, I'm not really sure what that is. But if I can just start to draw the broad strokes of what the kind of things that I would like to have, the details will suddenly come to light. So this might be an exercise that you can do going forward. Also thinking about your sliding door moments. So I'm a huge believer of creating your own opportunities. So at this stage, when you're thinking about your sliding door moments, it might be like, I need to get myself into more rooms that are going to stretch me. I need to reach out and open up possibilities and opportunities, because rightly or wrongly, I never had that sense where I would just sit and wait for the phone to ring. Certainly when I trained as an actor all those years ago, and I still act now, even though I know so many people in the industry, and I do get jobs suddenly that come to me, or a straight offer. But generally, I work on the basis that I have to put myself out there and meet the job halfway. So I want you to think about, what are those sliding door moments that you want to generate for yourself? My slides are frozen. Here we go. Next, your new boundaries. You've maybe been thinking this for a while, that there may be some rules, some things that have suddenly crept in, as they all can, or some emails that you might get from your boss at 4 a.m. because they're up, and you actually start your day feeling really stressed and all the things that you need to have. I want you to write a wish list of new boundaries that are really going to nurture you and protect you as you go into this new version of your leadership. And this doesn't have to be like, yeah, you know, those emails that you send in the night, like you don't have to fall out with anybody, but it's just about being really clear about what's important to you. Because once you can start to really connect with those things that are important, it's going to be much easier to be able to express them and share them in a really clean and transparent way. Also think about what your new badges are and what you would like to bring to the table. So maybe there's something in terms of your brand that you say, gosh, I'd like to get more visible. I feel like our customers are out there and I feel like we could tap into a much more global market. I was having this conversation with a coaching client the other day where she was saying, I feel like I've reached a ceiling of the people that know me and follow me, but I know there's more people out there. So maybe in terms of your leadership, it could be, I want to earn my visibility badge, or I want to really work on my confidence for the next year and really think about what that looks like so I can make some bolder choices and bolder decisions. And therefore, what are going to be the tweaks? Again, a coaching client was saying to me yesterday, she was like, I'm late for everything. I'm always late. And she said, my husband always says, wow, you're really, really relaxed, but then you stress out. And sometimes in terms of the way that we are operating in our lives, suddenly those old patterns of behavior start to seem a bit out of whack. So I want you to think, and again, it's not this makeover show where it's like, I'm suddenly going to go behind the curtain and then I'm going to come out and I'm a brand new person. It all starts with these little tiny tweaks. And also, what are going to be the lifestyle choices that you want to make? So certainly one thing that I've started doing in terms of leadership, in terms of being able to show up, is making sure I'm eating loads of really good, nutrient-rich foods. And that makes me feel good. That aligns with my vision of being sharp, of being able to communicate, of going to the places that I want to go to. So have a think about what these could be for you. So specifically, a year from now, I want you to think about the vision. What are you being? What are you doing? And what are you having? What the be, do, have list, basically. And again, it's about being really specific. So sometimes people will want to say, like, I want to be really powerful, or I want to be really confident. I want you to explore that further and think, okay, what does this actually mean in terms of being connected with me? What is my version of, say, confidence? What is my version of leadership? When I have, you might say, like, I want to have, a holiday, how lovely. Like, I want to have a really great holiday every year where I switch off completely. So what does that look like? Where would you want to go? How would you want to show up there? What would you have in place? So actually, when you were sitting and you were enjoying that lovely sun on your face and having a great time, what things would you need to put in place in order to do that? Also, this is about being really measurable. So how do you quantify your next phase of leadership? What are going to be the things that are going to be really useful for you in terms of checking in? For me, I love to check in every single weekend before I do my planning for the previous week. So I do things like, what went really well this week? Where do I need work? Why did that happen? I'm always dissecting my own process, because otherwise what I find is if I don't do those check-ins regularly, 3 months can suddenly go by and I'm like, oh, what happened? Or I should have intervened with this much earlier. So I want you to think maybe about a time frame that you're going to check in. And again, lead from that self-leadership, control the controllables. What are the things that you can control? How are you going to know that you're making progress? Daily decisions in support of the vision, the incremental steps. Now, we know the people on the internet like to tell us that we can do things in 72 hours or within a week or within a fortnight. I went from being homeless to living in a castle and driving a gold car. And that might be great for some of them. But certainly the biggest moves that I've been able to make in my life have not happened overnight. And yes, I agree, it does all start with a decision. But usually it's many, many incremental steps that take me closer, that nudge me towards where I want to get to. So again, this is about being very self-aware and thinking about what feedback would you give yourself? So what familiar patterns do you have? And this is again about being self-aware, because when we're going through growth, when we're moving into the next version of ourselves, I think I said this last time, sometimes it can feel that you're going to go like a mermaid, or you're going to just be like Beyonce coming up through the stage, or you're just going to look like you're in a aftershave advert looking all suave and slick and all the rest of it. For me, growth can sometimes be that moment at Alton Towers where you see yourself come off a roller coaster, you see the picture and you're like, wow, who is that woman? Like, what happened to her? She's crying, she's wanting to be sick, all of these sorts of things. So when I notice that growth has those two sides of the coin, as in I'm expanding, I'm going for it, there's my point, that's where I'm heading. The other stuff on the other side almost has to catch up. And that's when those moments of, I can't do it, I'm tired, things, the limiting beliefs that might hold us back. And so I want you to be aware of what that feedback is. And maybe you have been somebody that has had the same piece of feedback throughout your life. Nicky, you just need to do a bit more of X, Y, and Z. So I want you to become very self-aware in your own patterns and making sure that they are all in support of the vision. And where do you need to bring in your inner pageant mom or dad? So I had a client call the other day and he was saying, like, I want to do this. And then he stopped and he said, well, I don't know. Does that sound? And I could see that hesitation, because I also could see that he was hugely ambitious and he wanted to do X, Y, and Z. And that's when my kind of inner pageant mom came out. I was like, no, tell me the vision, get to the front, I'm cheering you on all the way, I've got my shell suit on, I'm cheerleading, I've got the pom-poms out, I'm doing that. And sometimes we need to do that for ourselves as well. And again, this is not the cheering on when you get the job promotion or you land the pitch or the kind of the big jazzy stuff. Sometimes it's connecting with that inner pageant mom who goes, well done, you spoke up there, well done. You said what you actually meant and you didn't skirt around the issue. Well done. You spoke to that client in a way that you would want to be spoken to, even though they were really difficult. So I want you to make sure that that inner, and your version of this, I'm just using inner pageant mom because, I kind of understand who those people are, not that I am one, definitely. But really think about who is that person who really cheers you on and goes, go on. And maybe it's like that grandparent that you had in your life that always thought you were amazing. What would they say to you in this instance? And also, what would your wise elder say? So sometimes we need to connect with that person, that part of ourselves that has already done it. So sometimes I look back on goals that I set 5 years ago, and it's a really nice place to go, I did it. I did that. And what would I have said to her 5 years ago to help her get there? So sometimes it's about tapping into that wise part of yourself, that wise person who goes, no, you can do it. Take your time. Keep moving forward, do X, Y, and Z, really connect with that version. Okay, so in terms of your leadership, how can you share your vision? So this doesn't necessarily mean it has to be your own show where you're always on like, hi guys, I'm doing this. This is what I'm working on. This is my goal. Da, 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 da. But it's really about how can you share this vision so you can make it real. So if you're looking for a new job, for example, who in your network is that person who you can go, just wanted to say, like, I'm just throwing it out there. If you hear of anything, let me know. And what so many of us can be tempted to do is to keep our vision to ourselves. Now, that's not to say that you have to share your vision with everybody, because sometimes when you share it with everybody, you get that response of like, all right, how are you going to do that? Oh, I'm not sure about that. That's when you open yourself up to feedback. And sometimes it's not feedback you necessarily want to have. So it's about being really clear about who you share this vision with. Imagine it's, I don't know, something really precious that you're holding, that you're carrying. You're going to pick the person that you let hold it or look at it or share it really carefully. So really consider what this could look like practically. And also think about how you can move from a state of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, to it's already done. So there's somebody that I know in my network, and I'm obviously saying this with love, but equally I'm like, you need to do this thing. I've known this person about 15 years and they've been making a film for that long, but they haven't made it yet. They're still writing it. And every time I see this person, they're not somebody I know particularly well. I'm like, how's things? Yeah, I'm still writing the film. Yeah, it's going really well. I've written 2 scenes now. And for me, I am always, and I wouldn't, I have those boundaries in place and I would never interfere in that way, but I'm always intrigued and would love to be able to support that person to go, okay, how can you get to a stage that it's already done? And when you're thinking about this leadership, your vision, really stepping into it, how can you start to put these things in place? So maybe it's saying on LinkedIn that you are available for these opportunities, or you are working or taking a course in these skills before you've completed the certificate. But if you're 2 out of 12 modules already in, you've probably learned a lot already. So it's always being in support of the vision. And also, how can you explain the vision further? Really connecting with how can you make this vision stand alone without you having to, it relying on you basically to explain it. So how can you show and tell all the time? So is this putting together some kind of website? Is this putting together a document of the things that you're doing? So rather than feeling like you have to quickly say, can I have 5 minutes? I'm kind of interested in this thing. To put yourself in a really powerful position where you're like, I've got something on email I'd really love to share with you. Would you mind if I sent this PDF across to you? Always thinking practically how you can show and tell. I'm just conscious of the time, so I'm going to rattle through these last bits because I want to make sure there's time for questions at the end as well. Also connecting with the ripple effect. Brands storytelling really works well in this situation. The ripple effect of what you're doing, the ripple effect of you stepping into your own leadership. Maybe it's you're the first person in your family to ever do this. Maybe you want to have a nonprofit and be able to reach 10,000 people. Think about the ripple effect and make sure it has a purpose, make sure it has an impact, because if it does, and it also brings other people along the way, people are going to be much more excited about your vision and much more invested in what you have to offer because they'll want to be part of it. And also, if you're leading with that energy of like, it's going to be great, those people who have great parties, and sometimes, it's a fairly, it's just, people could just say it's just drinks down round somebody's house. Oh, those days. But it could be somebody's like, it's going to be so great. We're going to do this. We're going to make margaritas. This is going to happen. Think about the energy that when you're in that purpose of that excitement, automatically people are going to be like, what are they doing? What's going on? They're invested in the process. This is a powerful question, which will really help you identify what, again, going back to the magical triangle, what might not be in support of the vision. Where are you polishing the shells? AKA, where are you playing small? So this sometimes is the moment where people will say, and clients will say it all the time, is their website is almost finished. but they haven't pressed publish yet. Or they have this thing, but they haven't told anybody. And this is the equivalent of a shop polishing the shelves, going, oh, let's just add a bit of new merchandise here. Maybe we should move that around. Maybe we should do that. What you have to do is just open the door and invite people in. Even if you're still like you're hoovering over here or something is happening, you have to invite people in to have the conversation, because of course it may not be perfect, but if you can stop polishing those shelves, you're going to get the wheels in motion. This is maybe one to explore another time, but how can you be innovative in your storytelling? So thinking about how you can share your own version of leadership from different angles, different ways of doing things. How can you do things differently? There's such a temptation in growth to look at what everybody's done, the safe bet, like, oh, I'll just buy the template, or I'll just get somebody who is an expert to write my CV. I want to encourage you to go inwards, to really check in with what's going on and consider how you can move forward in a way that feels good. Again, I always ask myself, how can you support tired, overwhelmed, self-doubt you? And you can add any feelings, emotions that come up for you in this process. So again, when you know yourself, when you go through gross things, what are the things that come up? Are you somebody who gets burnt out really easily? Are you somebody that gets really stroppy and angry about things when you feeling overwhelmed? If you can start with the plan of action, it's almost like the hangry state. Like if you're going in a car and you know it's going to be a long way, the best thing to do is just to have a really great selection of snacks. That's going to support you. So consider what those things are coming out to play. And how can you finally support yourself so you're in alignment with future you? Going back to that phrase of what's got you here is not necessarily going to get you there. Consider what this next level of leadership looks like for you. For me, it's about getting additional support. I want to bring on much more of a team. There are tasks that I'm doing in my business that I shouldn't be doing. I'm not the best at them, and it's time to outsource much more. It's time to delegate, and that's what my support, my alignment looks like for me. So consider what that is for you. Thank you so much. And yeah, wishing you loads of luck with whatever is the next step for you. I'm excited to hear more.